Anyone been accused of having an attitude? That's no fair. She's looking around at people like, you say something. You got an attitude right now. Right? So what's an attitude? It's usually negative. It's disrespectful. I would say those are great answers. I would say that those answers, though, would be inappropriate or incomplete for my parents. My parents were, so they were young when we were growing up. They were young when they got married, and so we were going to college with them. And so we became the butt of their jokes, the guinea pigs in their sociology experiments, and all of their alternative behavior methods. We were subject to those things. And so they would use all that stuff with us until it didn't work, and then they go back to what they knew, which was yelling and screaming. And so my dad would, and very intelligent man, but he would just lose it and couldn't, he would get so frustrated that he couldn't complete sentences, and he didn't know who we were. He'd be like, Andre Crystal Date, boy, get over here. Or he'd say, stop doing that. Don't you come over here, stop. Or you better. Never complete sentences. And the ironic thing was that we knew exactly what he was not saying. Right? And so he would get frustrated. And so he would get to a point where he would say really outlandish things like, if he didn't like how I was responding to him, he would say, boy, you better fix your face. And so I'd go. And apparently that's not what he was talking about, because he sent me to my room, right? And I'll never forget the one time he said, boy, you better learn how to act. Go to your room till you learn how to act. So I went to my room. I got my act together. I opened up the door to the hallway and I said, to be or not to be? And I spent more time in my bedroom, because that's not what they were talking about. But it wasn't until I was 17 that I figured out what an attitude was and what he meant by an attitude. And so I told you earlier that my father was a pastor, so I'm a preacher's kid. And so on Sunday, we would go to church from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. And so on Friday night, I'd ask my dad for the car because my dad loves me. What does he say? What does he say? What do you think? He says, yes, he loves me, right? So he would give me the keys. I'd hang out with my friends. I'd fill the car up with gas. I'd come home before curfew, and my dad would say I had what kind of an attitude? A positive or a good attitude. And what would I say about my dad's attitude? That is also a positive or good attitude. So Friday night, my dad and I are cool. Sunday, my best friend Dexter calls me at noon and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the movies? What do I know about Sunday? Church all day. But I'm 17. I'm invincible. And Jesus is my friend. So I go up to my dad and say, Dad, can I borrow the car? And what does my dad say? Not only does he say no, he gives me a lecture about how I'm leading people to hell. Every negative consequence in my household, the ultimate consequence was that you were going to hell. Didn't cut the grass, going to hell. Didn't do the dishes, going to hell. And you can either go to hell on your own, or he'd be more than happy to show you the way. And so as a result of that, I would say my dad had what kind of an attitude? A pretty negative or a bad attitude. What would he then say about my attitude? That is also pretty bad, right? So Friday night we're cool. Sunday we got a problem. What is it that actually determines one's attitude?
Whether you have a teenager or not.
Whether you have a teenager or not. What determines one's attitude? How what? How aligned you are. Okay. What was that? There was something here. Context. Okay, so what's the context? So let's go back to your teenager analogy, right? Or your teenager. How many people have a teenager in their life? All right, cool. Has this scenario ever played itself out with your teenager? So there's something that's on the teenager's mind. They want to do something. And so they come up to you and they say, "Dear gracious, kind, and beautiful adult, I would love it if you would grant me the opportunity to go to Cindy's party tonight in 5 minutes." And so you're standing there, you're like, "No, I'm not letting you go to Cindy's party. You got a C on your report card. Your room is a mess. And when was the last time you did dishes? Bobby, is it her turn to do it is your turn to do dishes. No, you can't go to Cindy's party." What happens to that kid? It's like they gained 5,000 pounds because the way they stomp, you would have thought. And then they have the nerve to go to their room and then close the door a little more firmly than they should. But then you stand there, you're thinking, you're like, you know what? They have been working with their brother pretty good, so they've been nice to their brother. And, the room, we can do the room tomorrow. You know what? That's not a big thing. And they did help Grandma cut the grass last week. So, you know what? I'm going to let them go to Cindy's party. And so you go knock on the dungeon door. And this gargoyle answers the door. And you say, "You know what, young gargoyle? I was just thinking, you can't go to Cindy's party." All of a sudden, that little monster turns back into your child. And they go, "Thank you so much. And you know what happened in school today was so-and-so and so-and-so. And did you know this?" So they actually want to have a conversation and talk to you. And you haven't talked to this child in 2 weeks. So what's the difference? They got what they wanted. When you get what you want, you have a good attitude. When you are denied or delayed access to what you want, you have a bad attitude. So when we have clients, coworkers, or subordinates with a bad attitude, what do we know about them for sure? They are not getting what they want. And so as a helper, we have 2 responsibilities to them. One is the easiest in terms of helping them change their attitude, which is to do what? Give them what they want. Give them what they want. So when I taught high school, I always had these archetypes that show up every semester as classes rotated. And there was always this kid who sat in the back who wanted attention. And he typically wanted to try to take attention from me, which was not going to happen because we don't have power struggles in my classroom because I have all the power.